COVID-19 SPUTNIK V vaccine procurement crisis. Chronology of the events. And so we're going to give you the chronology of the events as we go on. So first line is that on the 20th of December 2020, President Kufuor announces government's decision to secure vaccines to immune the population against COVID-19. That's what the President Kufuor said. Let's see the video of that right now.
Fellow Ghanaians, the recent news of emergency approval of COVID-19 vaccines by the Food and Drugs Administration of the United States of America and the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency of the United Kingdom provide considerable optimism and hope for the world in our battle to defeat the pandemic. Ghana, I assure you, is not going to be left behind in having access to the vaccines. I'm aware of the anxieties relating to the safety and efficacy of newly developed vaccines. Government will ensure that the COVID-19 vaccines to be deployed in the country are effective and are safe. To this end, I've put together a team of experts from the relevant institutions and agencies who are working assiduously towards the procurement and deployment of the vaccines in Ghana. The briefings held by the Ministry of Information will keep the nation updated on this matter. Until then, and with barely a week to the Christmas festivities, which bring in its wake family reunions, parties, and many social and religious gatherings, I urge all of us to err on the side of caution and observe the COVID-19 safety protocols, no matter where we find ourselves.
Okay, so that's in the chronology. That's where we start. We start on 20th December, where President Kufuor made this announcement. Remember, that was after the national election. Okay, let's move on. So at this stage, we come to our dashboard, and this is very important for us. Dashboard mark. Here, we score Kweku Agyeman Manu 10 over 10, because at this stage, nothing has happened, and the announcement that the government is going to create vaccines for Ghana was encouraging, because that's what all the people in the developed world were looking at. All the people in the developed world were waiting for the vaccine. So that a third world country can also expect vaccine publicly announced by the president. We give the dashboard 10 over 10 at this stage. But keep an eye on the dashboard as we go on, and then we cast the final verdict. Okay, so let's move on. The next one is a shocker that came to us on the 3rd of March, 2021. Now, on the 3rd of March, this is what happened. A Norwegian news outlet, Verdun Gang, reports that Ghana had requested to purchase doses of SPUTNIK V vaccine through two businessmen who were selling it to Ghana at $19 per dose instead of $10 per dose on the international market. The initial price quoted for the vaccine was $25 US, but it was negotiated downwards to $19 US, according to the Ghana Health Service. Okay, the report further revealed that government signed the purchase contract for 3.4 million doses of the vaccine after it received an initial 16,000 doses. So, okay, I shouldn't have touched the dashboard yet, but I already touched it. At this stage, when the Norwegian newspaper blows the alarm, Kweku Agyeman Manu's dashboard has changed. He's now come to 2 over 10 from 10 over 10. He's lost 8 points because the Norwegian announcement was a big shocker and a big alert to Ghana. It appeared that there had been no transparency in the process. It appeared that the government had, the Health Ministry had gone ahead and spoken to people who had questionable character and may have put the lives of Ghanaians at risk. So here, we score him 2 over 10 on the dashboard. Now, let's move on. Okay, now on 6th April 2021, a Bank of Ghana letter emerges. And it says that we say here that the Bank of Ghana advised Controller and Accountants General Department of having established a letter of credit in favor of the private office of Sheikh Ahmed bin Dalmouk Al Maktoum. Now, the letter says, if you can't see it that well, but I can read it. Request for the establishment of letters of credit for supply of 300,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines. And it says that we hereby advise that we have established the letter of credit LC valued at 2.850 million in favor of the private office of Sheikh Ahmed bin Mahmoud Al Maktoum on 1st April 2020. Okay, so this is the story here. Now, in spite of the fact that the Norwegian newspaper says that Ghana is being fleeced, the most important thing at this stage, even before we come to the money, which we can always do, is so that the vaccines come into the country. So we scored the dashboard up here because at this stage, the Ministry of Health is preparing to get the vaccines for Ghanaians. The concern of the Norwegian newspaper was not so much that the vaccine was dangerous, not that the vaccine was a fake drug, but that the money had been expended, that there was too much money being paid for the vaccine, that the cost of the vaccine had been exaggerated. So to the extent that the vaccine was good quality vaccine, but that there was allegations of exaggeration of the fees, and the government proceeded to issue letters of credit so that the vaccines may come, we score the dashboard. There's more here. Okay, this is the vaccine through the Ghana International Bank. Okay, so we scored the dashboard 5/10. I'm explaining so that when it gets to your turn to speak to us on phone, or if you want to send text, you can also challenge the explanation. The basis on which we scored the dashboard 5/10 is so that is because the government had taken steps to actually bring the vaccine to Ghanaians. 5/10 at this stage. Okay, let's move on. Now, on the 9th of July 2021, Parliament constitutes a 9-member ad hoc bipartisan committee to be chaired by Honorable Afenyo Makin to probe procurement contracts the government entered into with the private companies for the procurement and supply of SPUTNIK V vaccines. The committee's mandate was to determine the procurement process that was followed and the propriety of same, as well as inquire into any other matters connected to the purchase of the SPUTNIK V vaccine in agreement between the government of Ghana and Sheikh Ahmed Dalmouk Al Maktoum. Okay, so this was the mandate of Parliament's committee. They were to check the procurement issues relating to the vaccine and also to determine the agreement between the government of Ghana and Sheikh Al Maktoum. At this stage, the parliamentary committee has just been set up, so nothing has happened. Agyemang Manu remains on 5/10 on our dashboard. The parliamentary committee has just been set up. We don't know what the parliamentary committee will say. We are still waiting to hear what he will say. We keep him on the same score as he was when he began the purchases by issuing letters of credit. Okay, let's move on. Now, the minister appeared. So on the 15th of July 2021, Minister Agyemang Manu is here. And he says to the parliamentary committee, the ad hoc committee, he says as follows. The Minister of Health, Kweku Agyeman Manu, tells the bipartisan parliamentary probe committee that the company that agreed to supply Ghana with the SPUTNIK V vaccines has terminated the contract it had with the country. That's big, isn't it? That's quite heavy. So we are talking about Sheikh Al Maktoum. And Agyemang Manu shows up at the committee and says that, well, ladies and gentlemen, the contract has actually been terminated. Okay, let's see what more there is. Mr. Agyemang Manu said the contract was terminated because Sheikh Al Maktoum could not supply the vaccines as promised. Now, that's interesting. So, the story is that, as according to Agyemang Manu before Parliament, that the guy that we were relying on to supply the vaccines, the same guy who it was alleged against the government that he was fleecing the government from a $10 to a $19 per dose of vaccine, he's unable to supply the stuff. So he's terminated the contract. Okay, what do we say? We give Agyemang Manu 3/10. He drops from 5 to 3 in this matter because here we are. We don't even know whether we're going to get the vaccines. We're not going to get the vaccines anymore because the guy couldn't supply. So he's taking Ghana on a path that could not really generate results. The big question then in front of Parliament was, did money change hands? Did government of Ghana pay Sheikh some money that we have lost? And that was the concern of everyone. Everybody was agitated. Everybody was concerned about whether we have paid money and we have lost. This same causing financial loss to the state. It was a big deal. But in Parliament, the reason why we give Agyemang Manu 3/10 is that there are issues about the Attorney General's advice and what he does with the Attorney General's advice. Tonight, lawyers who are speaking for Agyemang Manu are citing the constitutional requirement, Article 21, which is the emergency powers of the president, under which the president created some emergency powers, under which the fundamental human rights of Ghanaians was curtailed legitimately by law, that within the context of the emergency powers, Agyemang Manu is able to contract some people to bring in vaccine without going through the regular parliamentary approval. That's the conversation tonight. And we're going to throw that conversation to you. I'll give you that at the end so that you can make a decision when we're about to cast the verdict. Whether what Agyemang Manu did was illegal or it's not illegal. Whether he could have gone under the president's emergency powers pursuant to Article 21 to be able to contract a product necessary for the emergency situation in the manner that it was done. But at this stage, Agyemang Manu is 3/10 on our dashboard. Let's move on. Okay, on 19th of July, the Minister of Health, Kweku Agyeman Manu, admits before Parliament's bipartisan committee that he failed to seek cabinet and parliamentary approval before engaging the private individual for the procurement of the SPUTNIK V vaccines. Now, this is where the matter really started. Okay, so Honorable Agyemang Manu admits to Parliament that he failed to do that. However, Honorable Agyemang Manu says that the emergency center at the Ministry of Health. Now, this emergency center at the Ministry of Health lives under the, and please prepare that document for me, the emergency center. They'll get it for me in a bit. The emergency center is a center at the Ministry of Health that sort of implements the president's emergency powers that was announced to the country pursuant to Article 21 of the Constitution. Agyemang Manu tells Parliament that, however, that he did not seek cabinet approval and he did not seek Parliament's approval, he got the emergency center and the tender committee at the Ministry of Health working under the emergency center to be aware of this process as he was trying to get the vaccines for Ghana. So that's Agyemang Manu's explanation at this stage. We'll get you the details in the document if we have time. So our dashboard brings Agyemang Manu all the way to 1. Why do we bring him to 1? Because he probably should have better investigated the emergency powers of the president, and he should have been clear to Parliament that all of these matters is captured under the emergency powers of the president. Because I belong to the school of thought that if the emergency powers of the president at Article 21 can curtail the fundamental human rights guaranteed by the Constitution, such that the fundamental human rights of free movement is curtailed, the fundamental human rights of association is curtailed, the fundamental human rights of many other actions are curtailed. Human beings are expected to present themselves in a certain way, in mask and all of that. All of those things are by law and by order, and the president generates these powers from the Constitution. Clearly, any other matter within the context of the emergency situation that was directly related to the emergency crisis should be able to be subsumed under the president's emergency powers, and therefore can exclude other matters that is provided for by the Constitution. Maybe we have to get a court to interpret that. But these are the two sets of interpretation tonight. One set of interpretation is that no, once you needed to go to Parliament to get the clarity from Parliament, to get permission from Parliament under the Constitution, before you can procure an international contract, which is what the relationship with Al Maktoum was about. It was an international contract because he's not Ghanaian. Before you can do that, you need a parliamentary approval. Okay, the other school of thought is that no, this was an emergency situation. Under Article 21 of the Constitution, the president can design emergency powers. EIS 65 and others were designed under this. Therefore, whatever Agyemang Manu did comes under the president's authority in the emergency powers, so long as the procurement of the product was connected to the emergency situation. You can decide how you want to see it. But these are the two schools of thought. We score Agyemang Manu 1/10 because he did not clearly articulate this to the parliamentary subcommittee. The emergency powers of the president, the emergency nature of the matter, he did not quite clearly articulate it that way. So we are worried about that. And then there was a concern about whether he was aware that money had been paid or not. Eventually, we find out that money was actually paid. Let's move on. Okay, so then on 2nd of August, 2021, the pressure begins to mount. The Minister of Health, Agyemang Manu, writes to Sheikh Al Maktoum to refund the money paid for the non-supplied doses of SPUTNIK V. So that's on 2nd August, he wrote that letter. Okay, this followed the bipartisan committee's finding that an amount of 2.8 million United States dollars, representing 50% of the contract sum of 5.7, had actually been paid to Mrs. Al Maktoum. So we have a letter here from Kweku Agyeman Manu that he wrote to the committee after he told the committee that he had not paid any money. He wrote to the committee upon his checks that the money had actually been paid. We'll put the letter on our social media page and then you can see it. So this is where the matter gets interesting. Kweku Agyeman Manu writes to Al Maktoum that because you couldn't deliver, bring back the money that we paid you. And that's interesting. Okay, now on the 2nd of August, Sheikh Al Maktoum presented Ghana with 20,000 doses of the vaccine instead of the initial agreed doses of 300,000 for the first batch. This is a letter from Al Maktoum writing back to the minister. But we wanted to put this on record that 20,000 doses of the vaccine was actually presented to the... it was actually presented to Ghana, 20,000 doses. So we have that. Okay, so at this stage, where Kweku Agyeman Manu writes to Sheikh Al Maktoum to bring back the money, we score him 5/10. Now, the reason why we score him 5/10 is because we thought that he had done some his fidelity to the state. He did a contract with Al Maktoum. Never mind that he didn't go to parliament. Never mind that he didn't tell cabinet. It was an emergency situation. That's what he will say. But he did a contract. Now, in the contract, the Honorable Minister for Health was mindful to place in the contract a clause that he can fall back on in case there's a problem. And that's why we give him 5/10. He puts in a termination clause. And in the termination clause, he puts in a requirement in the contract that if you are not able to pay any money that you have already taken from the Republic of Ghana, you will refund it. So in his letter to Al Maktoum, he quotes that clause, and that's very important. And that's why we raise up his dashboard score from below 5 to 5 at this stage. Because here, he's demonstrating, and later we'll show you Article 36, and we'll show you Article 21. He's demonstrating that as a Minister of State, holding the public purse, he's able to protect the public purse. That when he's entering into a contract, he puts in a clause that if this contract doesn't go the way that I expect, if the people of Ghana's money had been paid, that money will be returned. So he writes to Al Maktoum and said, hey, Chief, it's time for me to invoke that clause in the contract. So he invokes it. We give him 5/10. Let's see the response of Al Maktoum. Okay, Sheikh Al Maktoum on the 9th of August, Sheikh Al Maktoum responds to the letter by the Health Minister pledging to initiate the refund process. So this is a letter that I'm sure many people have seen already online. On the 9th of August, Al Maktoum responds and says, okay. You are right. The contract had a provision like that. I'm going to refund the money. This is where the story ends, and this is where the decisions are going to be taken, whether Agyeman Manu should leave or not. But as far as we are concerned, at that stage where Agyeman Manu is able to recollect what he wrote in the contract, that, hey, wait a minute, we have paid some money to Al Maktoum. He couldn't deliver. When I went before the Parliament subcommittee, I told them that he hadn't paid money, but I came back and I found that money had been paid. I've sent the parliamentary subcommittee that letter. That letter I have. They've sent it to us. I have that letter. The letter that says that he has already paid back. He has now acknowledged that money had been paid to Al Maktoum. The minister is in a fix. What do? He quickly remembers that, yeah, there's in the contract. Or maybe his lawyers remind him. The minister writes to Al Maktoum and says, look, in this contract, you are supposed to return the money if you are not able to deliver. Al Maktoum looks at the contract, probably shows it to his lawyers, and they agree with him that, oh, yes, you have to pay back Ghana the money. Now, that money is going to come back to Ghana. There's been a bit of waste of time. Yes, there has been. But that money is going to come back to Ghana. On the basis of that, we score Kweku Agyeman Manu back at 7/10. That's the score that we give to Kweku Agyeman Manu on 7/10. And we're going to show you in the Constitution why we score him 7/10. So the problem is that this whole story is Agyeman Manu procured vaccine. The Norwegian newspaper said he had procured it in excess of what it should have been. That's all true. Parliament puts an inquiry together, and that's the beauty of Ghana's democracy. It's to applaud Ghana's democracy that as soon as something like that happens, there is a platform, Parliament, where we can ventilate all of these issues. So Parliament called Agyeman Manu. They talk to him. He makes some admissions. Some errors are found. He actually even says that no money has been paid. It turned out that he himself found that money has been paid. He sent a letter to the committee that, oh, I said money had not been paid. But here is the letter. Money has actually been paid. People say, okay, money has been paid. You didn't get the vaccine. You've paid 2.4 million. What do we do now? He says, wait a minute. I'll go back to the contract. When we were writing the contract, we suspected anything could happen because in contracts, anything can happen. So we put in a clause. we put in a clause that will protect us and protect the people of Ghana's money whenever such a thing happens. Such a thing has now happened. So let's write to Al-Maktoum. Let's just not write to him. Let's invoke the aspects of the contract which requires him to pay, obliges him to pay, I should say. And he does that. For that reason, we score Agyemang Manu 7/10. Give us your score. Send it to our social media page. Good evening, Ghana official. So Occupy Ghana are now demanding the resignation of the minister. Now let's show you why we score him 7/10. So this Article 36. Article 36 of the Constitution is captured in the Directive Principles of State Policy. And it is here. It says, the state shall take all necessary action to ensure that the national economy is managed in such a manner as to maximize the rate of economic development and to secure the maximum welfare, freedom, and happiness of every person in Ghana, and to provide adequate means of livelihood and suitable employment and public assistance to the needy. The state shall take all necessary steps to ensure that the national economy is managed in such a way as to maximize. We believe that in writing out a contract where the health minister had put in a clause so that if money is lost, that money will come back to the people of Ghana, he was making obeisance to Article 36 of the 1992 Constitution, to be found in Chapter 6 of the Constitution under the broad headline of the Directive Principles of State Policy. That's what the 1992 Constitution says. Directive Principles of State Policy, in Chapter 6 thereof, Article 36. You find it there. And we think that in putting those clauses in the contract that he could turn back and recover the money, Agyemang Manu was making obeisance to Article 36. Let's come now to Article 21, which is the controversial matter, because what Agyemang Manu is being accused of, the other aspect of that they're accusing him of, which we overlook, for which reason we score him 7/10, is that in the process, he took an international contract without recourse to Parliament. Agyemang Manu did an international contract without recourse to Parliament and without recourse to the Attorney General, of course, or even violating or ignoring the Attorney General's advice. Now, we also know that the procurement of vaccines has to do with the emergency situation. And the President had already, pursuant to Article 21, passed an emergency executive instrument. Well, there can be a legal debate about this. But this is what Article 21 says. It says, nothing in or done under the authority of a law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this article to the extent that the law in question makes provisions for the imposition of restrictions that are reasonably required in the interest of defense, it goes on, public safety, public health, or running of essential services on the movement of residents within Ghana of any person or persons generally, or any class of persons. Okay, and there are others. So let's look at this in some detail. So it says that nothing in the law that the President will do pursuant to his emergency powers will be construed as being a violation of the Constitution. Because these emergency powers that the President has under the Constitution, for which reason he gave restrictions, these emergency powers go to offend our fundamental human rights guaranteed in Chapter 5 of the 1992 Constitution. Our rights of movement has been restricted. And therefore, if the Constitution says elsewhere that when you are doing an international contract, you have to, it's a must, you shall go to Parliament, that clause also could be restricted under the President's emergency powers. Unless we say that the procurement of vaccines had nothing to do with the President's emergency powers under the public health crisis. Unless we say that, and we cannot say that. COVID-19 is a public health crisis. Because of COVID-19, the President invoked his powers of the Constitution to create an emergency situation and to restrict Ghanaians from the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. The rights guaranteed by the Constitution is probably stronger than the procedures directed by the Constitution. The go to Parliament for an international contract is a procedure that is directed by the Constitution. Fundamental human rights, inalienable rights, are guaranteed by the Constitution. It is our take that if fundamental human rights guaranteed by the Constitution can be restricted by laws pursuant to Article 21, then procedures prescribed by the Constitution can also be restricted in the same context. It is for that reason that we conclude that for the fact that Agyemang Manu has been able to retrieve the money, and for the fact that he was mindful enough to put in that clause, the clause that there should be a revocation contract where we can take the money back. And indeed, Sheikh Al Maktoum has accepted to pay the money back. We score him 7/10. They'll put 7/10 back there, and then we can begin the discussion. 7/10 is our dashboard score for Kweku Agyeman Manu at the end of the story of the vaccine SPUTNIK V procurement processes, crisis, episode, saga, gate, whatever you want to call it. 7/10 is what we give Agyeman Manu. Should he resign? Should he not resign? Should he be sacked? Well, your guess is as good as mine. Let's hear your verdict. Our verdict is that at the end of the day, for the fact that he protected the public purse, for the fact that he brought the money back, for the fact that the contract went sour, but he was able to secure the money, which is our most fundamental interest, the economic well-being, we think that Agyeman Manu deserves 7/10. I end my story. I walk now across the table.